Hello, I'm Esther Githu-Ewart. It's Tuesday, February 15th. This is Africa 54.
Ethiopian Parliament votes to end a 6-month state of emergency, raising hopes of the easing of tension between the government and Tigrayan forces. The World Food Program rushes to avert the threat of famine across the Democratic Republic of Congo. As gender inequality persists in Africa, one organization is determined to help empower women on the continent to improve their well-being.
We begin in the Horn of Africa, where the Ethiopian Parliament on Tuesday voted for an early end to the country's 6-month state of emergency. The action effective immediately, adding to signs that the violent conflict between the government and rebellion Tigrayan forces could be easing. The state of emergency gave the government power to detain citizens without charge and search homes without a warrant. Thousands of Tigrayan civilians were rounded up and held in prisons and warehouses. The war has largely grounded to a stalemate, and diplomats helping to mediate progress towards peace is being made. Parliament's decision to lift the state of emergency came 3 weeks after cabinet approval. Now, for more on the state of emergency being lifted in Ethiopia, I'm joined by VOA Horn of Africa Managing Editor Solomon Abate. Solomon, good to have you back on Africa 54.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you for having me.
Help our viewers understand what the lifting of this state of emergency means for the people of Ethiopia and specifically for the Tigrayans.
Okay, Esther, first of all, I apologize for my appearance. I had a very short notice, so I didn't have to put my necktie on. So back to your question. Number one, the constitutional order has been reinstated. You know, it was suspended by the state of emergency. Now, all citizens who were arrested during the state of emergency, all cases of arrests and charges would be returned back to the regular, formal justice procedures and mechanism, and also it may enable the government to handle the peace situation or the talks in a better manner. And for your question, what it means for Tigrayans, as you said, the TPLF and others also were accusing the government of arresting mostly Tigrayans because of the state of emergency. The government was accusing those people.
So does Solomon now, this lifting of the state of emergency means that the Tigrayans who were detained and others, you know, imprisoned, including elderly people and even younger children, can now be released from detention?
As you recall, Esther, recently the government released some arrested people, some detainees recently, due to humanitarian reasons, as the government said. But now, they didn't say if they would be released immediately, but all cases will be transferred to the formal judiciary mechanisms, judiciary system.
And what would this mean in terms of allowing access to humanitarian aid to reach the people of Tigray and other parts of Ethiopia that haven't been able to receive any aid, food especially?
Yeah, they didn't connect the state of emergency situation to the humanitarian access. The government always said that the international community was okay to deliver the humanitarian supplies to Tigray, but on the other side, the TPLF people used to say that there was a de facto blockade, so the access was not able then. So this situation, as the UN Under-Secretary General Amina Mohammed said,
yes,
creates a better situation.
Right. Solomon, As always, thank you so much for your insight about what's going on in Ethiopia. We hope for the best.
Thank you again for having me.
Solomon Abate is VOA's Horn of Africa managing editor. He joined us live here in the studio. Moving on to eastern Congo, Ituri province, militants armed with guns and machetes killed at least 15 people and wounded 4 others on Tuesday in an early morning raid on a village, according to local authorities. The sector chief says attackers stormed the village of Sieri Abekozo just before dawn, hacking residents with machetes and setting several buildings on fire. The chief and witnesses are blaming the attack on the Kodeko militia, which earlier this month killed 60 residents of a displaced persons camp in Ituri province, according to a local humanitarian group. Now, on the outskirts of Kinshasa's capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo, the usually tranquil village of Kinduti is plagued by hunger. The World Food Programme is trying to avert a possible famine throughout the country. The DRC is among the countries most affected by acute food shortages in the world, with more than 20 million people in desperate need. Paul Ndiho has more.
The DRC is among the countries most affected by starvation globally, with more than 20 million people in desperate need. Kinditu, a small village, sits at the end of a bumpy track through the savannah, outside the largest capital city in the DRC. There are no grain stores in its straw-roofed hut, no crops or farms along the 35-kilometer dirt road. Through the grassland, just men pushing old bikes loaded with sacks of charcoal under the sweltering sun.
There's no business here. There's no more forest. Our fields are devastated by rodents that eat our potatoes. We have no way to harvest our crops. This is the cause of hunger in the village.
Albertine, 80, is worried about the village's future and wants help.
Concerning the hunger problem, the government should send machines to make the fallow land to cultivate better. They should help us. We face many hardships.
In November 2021, the UN's World Food Programme, WFP, and Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, say the food crisis in the DRC touched a quarter of the vast country's population, nearly 27 million people. And those suffering were not just in the country's conflict zones, but in and around the capital city.
In the DRC, there are 27 million people who are in a crisis or urgent need in terms of food security. Here in Ituri, we're in a situation where we're one step away from this famine, which is precisely why the World Food Programme is carrying out this sort of project.
Last year, the WFP teamed up with the UN's children agency, UNICEF, and the government to help locals buy food. The project, which helped to feed 130,000 individuals, aimed to change the people's lives and make them more independent. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
More than 100 Sudanese detainees, including high-profile politicians, began a hunger strike on Tuesday in Soba prison, according to allied lawyers and doctors. The detainees are part of the protest movement against an October 25th army coup that ended a civilian-military power-sharing arrangement that followed the overthrow of long-ruling autocrat President Omar al-Bashir in 2019. The coup prompted mass protests, during which 81 people have been killed, most recently 2 on Monday, according to the Central Committee of the Sudanese doctors. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg is welcoming signals from Russia that it may be looking for a diplomatic solution, but urged Moscow to demonstrate its will to act. This comes as Russia on Tuesday says some of its military units are returning to their bases after exercises near Ukraine. Russia, however, did not say how many units were being withdrawn and how far, after a buildup of some 130,000 of its troops to the north, east and south of Ukraine that has triggered one of the worst crises in relations with the West since the Cold War. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba says Kiev will only believe that Russia is moving to de-escalate the situation if it saw for itself that Russian troops were being pulled British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says an attack could be imminent and that Russian troops could reach Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, very, very quickly. Now, for the latest on a possible Russia invasion of Ukraine, I'm joined live by Philip Crowther, international affiliate reporter with AP Global Media Services from Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. Hello, Philip. Now,
hi, good to be with you.
Now, Russia claims some of its troops are returning to their bases, and President Putin spoke just moments ago. What are the takeaways from his speech?
Well, somewhat encouraging words from Russian President Vladimir Putin just a few hours ago. He says, "We don't want war." That is something, of course, that the Kremlin has said many times before over these last few weeks. Every time there have been warnings of an imminent attack from Western sources, from Western governments, Russia has always responded by saying there are absolutely no plans for an invasion to happen. Now, despite that, though, there is still a troop buildup happening as we speak on the borders between Russia and Ukraine, but also on the border between Belarus and Ukraine. That's only 75 kilometers away from here, from the Ukrainian capital. Now, troop buildup happening on one side, but also some troops being withdrawn and being pulled back to their bases. This has been confirmed by the Russian Defense Ministry. It, though, says that is a normal process. Despite this being normal after military exercise, it has given a lot of hope, or rather a glimmer of hope, that diplomacy is still a possibility here to get out of this enormous risk of war breaking out here between Russia and Ukraine. That openness to further talks on behalf of Vladimir Putin of Russia, that gives pretty much everybody involved a little bit more hope. Russia says that it wants talks about its security grievances. There are many, the biggest one of all being that Ukraine never be allowed to become a member of NATO, that being a demand also that has been flatly rejected by NATO and by the United States.
With the British Secretary sounding an alarm that a Russian invasion in Ukraine is imminent, how is Ukraine and the West prepared to counter such an invasion if indeed it does take place?
Well, look, the truth is that Ukraine is a little bit of a lonely country right now, because the truth is that there has not been a single government that has said that it will send troops to Ukraine to help it defend itself from a Russian attack. Ukraine is not a member of NATO, so no other member country of NATO will be sending troops here to defend Ukraine from Russia. I think Ukraine and its government and its people are very much aware of that it would have to fight on its own against Russia. Now, the Ukrainian military is a lot stronger than it was in 2014 when fighting first broke out in the southeast of the country between Ukrainian soldiers and Russian-backed separatists, a war that is still going on 8 years later. But those Ukrainian soldiers, they have been receiving a lot of weapons from NATO member countries, from Western allies, and have also been receiving a lot of training from US forces, for example. But they have also been pulled out of the country with all of these warnings of an imminent attack coming from their very own US government. There are no more US forces in the country to train those Ukrainian soldiers right now.
And very quickly, Phil, what are Ukrainians saying about this tense situation that is likely to happen in their country? How are they reacting to this?
Look, for the last 2 weeks, we've pretty much always said the same. There seems to be an enormous disconnect between the calm we feel here in the Ukrainian capital and those dire warnings of an imminent attack and of Ukraine being surrounded on pretty much all sides by Russian troops. People are going about their business here, but there is a little bit of nervousness, of course. But always remember this, that Ukraine is a country that has been at war for 8 years with Russia, it says, with Russian-backed separatists at the very least. And they have seen provocations from Vladimir Putin's Russia before. They have seen troop buildups on the border between Russia and Ukraine before, and they have seen big military exercises performed as well, the likes of which are happening right now, very, very close to the Ukrainian border. There is a little bit of tension in the air, but still life does seem to strangely, weirdly go on as normal.
Philip, thank you for your excellent reporting. Philip Crowther is an international affiliate reporter with AP Global Media Services. Diplomacy has reached a fever pitch between NATO allies and Russian President Vladimir Putin, with the White House offering the Russian leader two choices: an invasion of Ukraine with devastating consequences, or negotiated peace with what Putin sees as humiliating concessions. What's his next move? Anita Powell reports.
The White House insists there's only one way out of the mounting crisis as Russia continues to amass troops and hold drills along the Ukrainian border: diplomacy. But after a frenzied weekend of high-level talks between President Joe Biden and the leaders of Russia and Ukraine, an unsettling fact remains. No one knows what President Vladimir Putin's next move will be.
As we have said before, we're in the window when an invasion could begin at any time. We will not comment on any details of our intelligence information, except to say that it could begin this week. The U.S. is ready for any situation.
Ukraine's leader on Monday said all signs point to an invasion.
We are told that February 16 will be the day of the invasion. We'll make it a day of national unity. The relevant decree has been signed. We will put out national flags, put on yellow-blue ribbons, and will show our unity to the entire world.
Washington has sent hundreds of millions in military aid to Ukraine, and on Monday ordered the temporary relocation of the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv. Will Pomerantz, acting director of the Wilson Center's Kennan Institute, told VOA that Putin is unlikely to back down. Putin has demanded that Ukraine be barred from its goal of joining the NATO alliance. The U.S. has dismissed that demand, citing NATO's open-door policy.
I don't see Putin really having an option to retreat because he has put so much at stake during this crisis. And to retreat and kind of say, never mind, that's not Vladimir Putin's strategies.
On Monday, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz visited Kyiv ahead of a Tuesday trip to Moscow and demanded clear steps to de-escalate the current tensions.
We are prepared to have a serious dialogue with Russia about questions of European security. NATO and the USA made proposals to Russia that we support. We now expect a reaction and answer from Russia.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov told Putin that Russia should stay in the talks.
The readiness for listening to counter-arguments, our possibilities aren't exhausted. Of course, they shouldn't continue endlessly, but at this stage, I would propose to continue and increase them.
Biden says NATO allies are in lockstep and that Russia will face harsh sanctions if it invades. It is clear there is no love lost between the formerly United Soviet states. Russia annexed part of Ukraine in 2014 and controls it still. But in the testy, frigid Ukrainian capital, residents this Valentine's Day are trying to banish fear with the one force stronger than war: love. Anita Powell, VOA News, Washington.
Still to come, a Nigerian radio station gives a voice to women to discuss their real-life challenges. But first, Haiti Adams tells us what's coming up on Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
Next Straight Talk Africa, we'll take a look at informal housing and unplanned communities. Is there a place for them in big urban centres? We'll look at what the mayor of Freetown, Sierra Leone is doing, how she's bringing changes to her city, including its unplanned communities. We'll also talk to a Nigerian American who's making a big difference in affordable housing in Washington, D.C. Join me, Haiti Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Life under the Taliban in Afghanistan has taken a toll on its people. Most foreign aid was cut off after the Taliban toppled the Western-backed government in the summer. The United Nations estimates 98% of Afghans are not eating enough, and hospitals and schools cannot afford to pay staff. On Tuesday, Britain said it could co-host an international aid conference with the United Nations next month to help alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, where poverty and hunger have risen sharply since the Taliban took power last year. Now for more on life under the Taliban, I'm joined live from Kabul, Afghanistan by Aisha Tanzim, VOA's Central and South Asia Division Chief. Aisha, please tell us what the economic situation is like under the Taliban.
Well, the economic situation in Afghanistan right now is really bad. We've talked to shopkeepers and business owners who say their business is down significantly from the pre-Taliban era. We've talked to people who haven't been able to feed their children. A lot of families are eating only dry bread with water. According to the aid organizations, 90% of Afghans are now below the poverty line, which means they are now making less than $2 a day. While the international community is trying to get humanitarian aid into the country, it is not reaching everyone. A lot of people are slipping through the cracks. We've talked to people who've been forced to either sell their daughters or sell their kidneys, even people who have jobs. And by the way, 1/3 of Afghan families since in the last 6 months have lost all their income, which means that all breadwinners in the family have lost their jobs. Even those who have jobs still, their income has dropped significantly because their pay has been cut. So the economic situation in Afghanistan is not well, and people are suffering.
Aisha, given the dire situation in Afghanistan, are people with families outside of the country able to send any financial help that can assist their families back home?
Well, it's difficult. They'll have to find either some means outside the banking channels, because the Taliban government is not recognized by the international community, and the senior Taliban leadership that's in the government still has some individuals that are sanctioned by the UN or the United States. So international banks are afraid of routing money to Afghanistan in case the money gets into the hands of a sanctioned individual and they may have to pay penalties, which means that the banking in Afghanistan is really suffering. And even for people who are receiving their salaries, you're only allowed right now in Afghanistan to take out $200 per week, and there are long lines outside of banks. So it's a hassle to get your money out, even if you have money. So it is very difficult right now to send money from outside Afghanistan into Afghanistan.
A difficult situation indeed. Aisha, excellent reporting. Thank you very much. Aisha Tanzim reporting live from Kabul, Afghanistan. Global data shows that women's health and wellness rank higher in countries with more gender equality. Gender equality is essential to achieving everyone's right to the best health possible, according to the World Health Organization. Observers say although a lot has been done to empower women over the years, the urgency remains in low and middle income countries to promoting women's sense of self-worth, ability to make their own decisions, and their right to influence social change for themselves. A 2019 report by McKinsey Global Institute called The Power of Parity indicates that gender inequality is still high and progress toward gender parity has stagnated in sub-Saharan Africa. Africa 54's Lino Mudu spoke with Linda Fawaz, founder of the Empress mindset movement. She elaborates on her efforts to help empower women in Africa in improving their well-being in the continent.
The purpose of this organization is to bring women to the world stage to understand how truly great they are. Through this, we have mental health, physical health, financial health, spiritual health, media, beauty and fashion, women in leadership, and legal and justice. Women are going to create the change for the future. As women, we need to promote, empower, unite, and collaborate with one another in order for us to obtain our objective as Empress mindset.
So how do you define an Empress mindset?
Empress mindset is a woman of divine power and rank. Her mindset is her attitude and her behavior towards her journey. And Empress mindset is giving back. It's a woman sitting in a position of power and knowing that, and when she rises to the top, she's blessed. And when she lifts other women and girls, she's doing the work of God, which is a blessing. And if she doesn't, it means she only got lucky.
Where do you see some of the most pressing needs, especially African women on the continent?
Many people shy away from mental health. And the most important part of your body is your mind. If you don't strengthen your mind, you will suffer from severe mental health issues. People need to be educated when it comes to their physical health. And a lot of times, you have people who are in these domains They don't have to come out and give money, but you can give your time and you can educate your community, your continent, for people to be able to lead their lives in a healthy manner. When it comes to your financial health, you have a lot of people who have acquired wealth because of the continent, and they have no idea on how to give back and how to create opportunities for others who may not have the jobs, the education, backgrounds where they are coming from. So I think when it comes to finance, setting up microfinances, be able to assist women where they can now sustain themselves and become independent and powerful and give back to their societies and their communities so other women can have an opportunity to lead healthy lives as well.
What does implementation of your programs look like? What do you do on the ground?
This is a movement that I'm trying to create a platform for these women who are in these domains to come out and unite, collaborate, promote, for us to be able to empower women hand in hand, forming a solidarity. My position right now as the founder, CEO, president of Empress Mindset is using my voice to call out to women in these different domains. Let's join forces. Let's see how we can create this change for the future, change the lives of our girls and women so they can understand how truly great they are. So far, I've launched it. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. I was recently at an international school here in Côte d'Ivoire, an English school, where I had girls from ages 12 to 18. I had 100 girls, and they were the panelists, and they did extremely well. And so this was an opportunity for me to also get a feeling of where these young women are as far as their mental health and where they're headed. After listening to them, they are definitely going to create the change for the future.
So women in general and African women in particular have faced various challenges for generations. There has been some progress made over the years, we cannot deny that, but a lot remains to be done, however. How will you measure success with the Empress Mindset movement?
One thing that people have not really understood, education is key. You know very well that when you educate a woman, you educate a nation. Entrepreneurship is something that will give you the opportunity to feel independent and powerful. Because once you can sustain yourself financially, you're able to actually make a life for yourself and to show others that they can create the same type of life for themselves if they follow the right steps. However, when I look at the Empress Mindset, I look at agriculture, because once you can grow your own crops and you can also sell these crops to sustain yourself, you then are sending a message out there, let's go back to the soil. You don't necessarily guarantee anyone that if I send you to become a secretary or to learn how to do computer science, that you're actually going to come back a superstar. But you can never go wrong with agriculture. And I think with the Empress Mindset, if you follow the steps, you can definitely achieve greatness and reach your highest potential. Women are going to create this change that we're all hoping and wishing for, and the future is definitely female, and the future is Empress Mindset.
What do you mean?
Thank you so much, Leno. That's our show for today. Thank you for watching.